The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber slid open with a soft hiss. Do-hyun walked through first, his black hair neatly combed and his simple gray suit making him look almost plain next to the glittering crystalline forms of the Vithani, counselors. Behind him, Sora carried a small device that beeped quietly as she recorded everything around them. The chamber was huge. Crystal pillars stretched up to a ceiling that seemed to disappear into darkness. Floating platforms held different, alien species, each one stranger than the last. The Vithani looked like living diamonds, their bodies throwing rainbow light across the walls. The Morphids were clouds of gas that somehow held shape, speaking through vibrations in the air. The Klaxi clicked and chittered from their insect-like bodies, their many eyes watching every movement. Do-hyun stopped at the center of the chamber and bowed deeply. "Honored counselors," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the vast space. "We come from Earth. We are humans. We ask to join your great community of stars." Counselor Vithara, the tallest of the crystal beings, spoke first. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Humans from the death world Earth, we have read your files. Your planet is classified as Class 12 dangerous. How did such a violent world create beings who seem so gentle?" Sora looked up from her recording device, her eyes wide with curiosity. She had studied the other species for months, but seeing them in person was still amazing. The way the Morphids floated without any visible support, how the Klaxi moved, in perfect coordination like a single mind split into many bodies. It was all wonderful and strange. "Our world taught us to work together," Do-hyun replied. "Yes, Earth can be dangerous, but that danger made us help each other. We learned that survival comes from cooperation, not fighting." A Klaxi counselor stepped forward, its four arms gesturing in what their translators said was amusement. "Cooperation? How quaint. Tell us, human, what happens when cooperation fails? What happens when you must fight?" Do-hyun's smile never wavered. "We try very hard to make sure fighting is not needed. We believe there is always another way." From the observation area, Woo-jin watched the proceedings with fascination. As Earth's chief scientist for the mission, he had been chosen to demonstrate human technology if asked. He carried a small case containing what he considered their most basic inventions, things so simple that even children back home could understand them. The Morphid counselor's gaseous form shifted colors from blue to purple. "Show us these cooperative technologies, humans. Show us what a death world creates when it tries to be peaceful." Woo-jin stepped forward and opened his case. Inside were small devices that hummed quietly. "This is a fusion reactor," he said proudly. "It gives clean energy. By joining tiny pieces of matter together, we use them to power our cities." The alien counselors exchanged looks. Phaethara's crystalline form dimmed slightly. "You carry fusion reactors as demonstrations? How primitive. Our children learn to build such things in their basic education." Woo-jin's face lit up even more. "Really? Your children must be very smart. Would it be possible to meet some of them? We would love to learn how you teach such advanced concepts to young minds." Sora made a note in her device. The human seemed genuinely excited about learning from everyone. She had watched Do-hyun practice his speech dozens of times, but he never once talked about what humans could offer others. He only spoke about what they hoped to learn. "And this," Woo-jin continued, pulling out another device, "is our basic, faster-than-light drive. It lets our ships travel between stars. The journey from Earth to here took us 3 months. The Klaxi counselor clicked in what sounded like laughter. 3 months? Our cargo ships make that journey in 6 days. Your technology is indeed quite basic. 6 days? Woo-jin's eyes went wide. That's incredible. The engineering required for such speed must be amazing. Would you be willing to share some of the principles? We understand if such knowledge is restricted, but even basic concepts would help us improve." In the corner of the chamber, Minho stood quietly. His position was listed as military advisor, but he had said very little since arriving. His dark eyes moved constantly, taking in every detail of the chamber, every gesture from the alien counselors, every security measure he could spot. He wore the same simple clothes as the rest of the human delegation, but something about the way he stood suggested hidden strength. "Tell us about your military," demanded the Klaxi counselor. "All species have warriors. Even peaceful ones must defend themselves. What weapons do Deathworlders create?" Minho stepped forward for the first time. When he spoke, his voice was calm and quiet. "We prefer not to speak of weapons in such a peaceful place. If defense becomes necessary, we have methods. But we hope they will never be needed." "Methods?" Vethara's light pulsed brighter. "You are very vague, human. Surely you can tell us something about your military capabilities." "Our capabilities are adequate for our needs," Minho replied. His tone was still polite, but something in his voice made several of the alien counselors shift uncomfortably. "We believe that the best weapon is one that never has to be used." Sora noticed how the aliens reacted to Minho. There was something different about him compared to Do-hyun and Wu-jin. While the ambassador and scientist radiated openness and curiosity, Minho seemed to hold something back. Not in a threatening way, but like a deep lake. Calm on the surface, but with unknown depths. The Morphid counselor changed colors again, this time to a worried yellow. "Your application mentions that Earth has experienced many wars. How do you explain this if your species is so peaceful?" Do-hyun answered quickly. "We have learned from our mistakes. Yes, we fought in the past, but each war taught us that fighting brings only pain. We decided to choose a better path. That is why we want to join you, to learn how peaceful species solve their problems." "Very well," Vethara announced. "The Council will consider your application. You will be granted provisional membership while we observe how you interact with the galactic community. You will be classified as a developing species requiring guidance and protection." "Protection?" Do-hyun asked, looking confused. "Of course," the Klaxi counselor explained. "Deathworlders often struggle in civilized space. The stress of leaving such violent environments can cause mental problems. Some become dangerous. We will assign monitors to help you adjust." Sora saw Minho's jaw tighten slightly, but his expression remained neutral. Do-hyun just smiled and bowed again. "We are grateful for your wisdom and care. We promise to be good students." As the session ended and the humans were escorted to their temporary quarters, Minho walked slightly behind the others. His eyes continued to move, cataloging everything. Guard positions, exit routes, weapon signatures, species capabilities. The aliens saw a quiet military advisor. They did not see a predator taking careful measure of potential threats and opportunities. The humans had been welcomed into galactic civilization, but none of the aliens understood what they had really just invited in. Trade Administrator Klaxi was having the strangest day of his career. His forearms moved quickly across his desk displays as he reviewed another impossible report. Human cargo ship Peaceful Journey had arrived at Station Theta 7 with what Captain Taewon called minor meteor damage. Klaxi pulled up the visual records. The human ship's hull was peppered with holes that would have turned any other vessel into a cloud of debris. Atmospheric breach alerts filled 3 screens. Radiation. Warnings blinked red across the entire sensor array. By all laws of physics and common sense, everyone aboard should have been dead. Instead, Captain Taewon had docked normally and submitted a routine damage report. "Small rocks hit us near the Vega system," the human had written. "Nothing serious. We'll fix during standard maintenance." Klaxi's translator struggled with the concept. His own species, the Klaxi, built ships with triple redundant hull systems specifically because even tiny meteorites could be fatal. Yet here was a human treating massive hull breaches like scratched paint. The trade administrator decided to investigate personally. He scuttled on his 6 legs through the station corridors to docking bay 12, where the human ship sat like a wounded beast that refused to die. Inside the ship, he found engineer Yu-jin welding one of the larger holes with a tool that looked suspiciously simple. She wore basic protective gear that would have been useless against the radiation levels Klaxi's sensors detected. "Excuse me," Klaxi said, his translator converting his clicks into human speech. "Are you not concerned about the radiation exposure?" Yu-jin looked up and smiled. She pulled off her welding mask, revealing a face that looked perfectly healthy, despite being in what should have been a lethal environment. "Oh, this old thing?" She gestured at the radiation detector on her belt, which was clicking rapidly. "Yeah, it's a bit higher than normal. I'll take some vitamins when I'm done. Should be fine. Vitamins for radiation poisoning." Claxey's compound eyes tried to process this information and failed. Meanwhile, across the galaxy on the medical station Sanctuary Prime, Dr. Hayen was causing her own type of confusion. The young human doctor had arrived 3 weeks ago as part of a medical exchange program. Since then, she had revolutionized treatment for 17 different species. Dr. Hayen called Morphid Healer Pafara, his gaseous form a nervous orange color. "Your latest treatment proposal for Vithani crystal rot. The compounds you suggest would dissolve our patients from the inside." Hayen looked up from her research pad, her black hair falling across her face. "Only in large doses," she said cheerfully. "In small amounts, those same compounds should help regrow the damaged crystal matrix. It's all about dosage. But these are deadly toxins," Pafara insisted. "To most species, yes," Hayen agreed. "But Vithani biology processes minerals differently. What kills us might heal them. That's the beauty of xenobiology. Everything is different, so everything is possible." Her colleague Seok Jin was having similar conversations in the engineering department. His paper on gravity adaptation had been distributed throughout the station, and the reactions were intense. Chief Engineer Vethek, a Vithani whose crystal body resonated with worry, cornered Seok Jin in the gravity lab. "This cannot be correct," he said, his voice like breaking glass. "You claim humans can function normally in gravitational fields up to 4.2 standard units?" "Well, 4.2 is pretty heavy," Seok Jin admitted. "You start to feel it after a few hours. Most people prefer to stay under 3.5 for extended periods." Vethek's crystalline form dimmed. His own species required special suits to function in anything over 0.8 standard units. "And the minimum? How low can your species function?" "Zero gravity. That's fun for a while, but you lose bone density if you stay too long. Most humans prefer at least 0.3 for long-term living." The Vithani engineer ran the calculations 3 times before accepting them. Humans could function in gravitational ranges that spanned from barely there to crushing death. It was like discovering that someone could live comfortably in both Arctic tundra and volcanic lava. The most disturbing incident happened during a diplomatic dinner on Luna Station. Ambassador Do-hyun was meeting with Counselor Morphex when assassins struck. The Phantom Claws, a terrorist group opposed to human integration, had decided to make a statement by killing both the human ambassador and his alien host. The attack should have succeeded. 3 heavily augmented Klaxi warriors, enhanced with military-grade cybernetics, burst through the restaurant's windows. Their weapons could punch through battle armor. Their reflexes were artificially enhanced beyond natural limits. They had trained for this mission for months. Ji-ho, listed on the diplomatic roster as security detail, was sitting at a nearby table when the attack began. He was not wearing armor. He carried no visible weapons. His job description suggested he was basically a bodyguard. What happened next redefined several species' understanding of the word bodyguard. Ji-ho moved like water flowing uphill. Smooth, impossible, and completely contrary to physics as the aliens understood it. The first assassin's weapon never fired. Ji-ho's hand closed around the warrior's wrist with a quiet cracking sound, and the Klaxi's enhanced arm simply stopped working. The second assassin managed to aim his weapon before Ji-ho reached him. The energy blast should have cut the human in half. Instead, Ji-ho seemed to flow around it like it was a mild inconvenience, his hand finding pressure points that made the warrior's cybernetic enhancements shut down one by one. The third assassin tried to run. This turned out to be a mistake. Ji-ho moved with the casual efficiency of someone taking a leisurely walk, yet somehow appeared in front of the fleeing terrorist without seeming to hurry. "Excuse me," Ji-ho said politely as the assassin bounced off his apparently immovable form. "I'm afraid you'll need to come with me." The entire fight lasted 37 seconds. All 3 assassins were alive but completely incapacitated. Jiho hadn't even wrinkled his suit. As security forces arrived to collect the unconscious terrorists, Jiho returned to his table and resumed eating his soup. "Sorry about the interruption," he told the stunned alien diners. "These things happen sometimes." Later that night, Counselor Morphex sent an encrypted message to the Galactic Council. "The humans are not what they appear to be," he wrote. Their security detail disabled 3 augmented Klaxi warriors using what he called basic hand-to-hand techniques. If this is basic, what do their advanced techniques look like? In the medical wing of Luna Station, the 3 captured assassins were being treated for their injuries. The Klaxi doctor attending them, Dr. Klexara, was baffled by the damage patterns. "Precise nerve strikes," she told her medical log. "No permanent damage but complete temporary paralysis of all motor functions. The human somehow knew exactly where to apply pressure to shut down cybernetic enhancements. This level of biological knowledge combined with physical capability is unprecedented." Meanwhile, Jiho filed his incident report with characteristic human understatement. "Minor disturbance during diplomatic dinner. 3 individuals attempted disruption. Situation resolved with minimal force. No serious injuries. Recommend increased security screening for future events. Minimal force." The phrase would be quoted in intelligence reports across the galaxy. If that was minimal force, what did maximum force look like? Trade Administrator Klaxi sat in his office reviewing all the reports that had crossed his desk in recent weeks. Humans treating lethal radiation as a minor annoyance. Human doctors proposing cures using compounds that would kill most species. Human engineers casually functioning in gravity that would crush others. Human security personnel defeating elite warriors with basic techniques. A pattern was emerging, and it terrified him. Every time humans did something that seemed impossible, they acted like it was perfectly normal. Every display of what other species considered superhuman ability was met with casual dismissal. What are they hiding? Klaxi wondered aloud, his forearms trembling as he sealed his report for transmission to the Galactic Council. What else can they do that they consider basic? Across the galaxy, similar reports were being filed by administrators, doctors, engineers, and security officials, all asking the same question. If this was humans being careful and restrained, what happened when they stopped holding back? The joint training facility on Kepler Station was designed to be the ultimate test of military cooperation. Representatives from 12 species would train together, learning to work as a unified peacekeeping force. The facility itself was built to handle the most demanding requirements of any member species. Changmin arrived with his usual quiet confidence. His file listed him as a routine military instructor from Earth's Peacekeeping Academy. He carried a simple bag containing what he called basic training materials and wore the standard-issue human military uniform, plain gray fabric that looked almost primitive next to the advanced armor worn by other species. Subin walked beside him, listed as his assistant. She carried an even smaller bag and seemed more interested in the station's architecture than in the impressive displays of alien military technology around them. Instructor Changmin, announced Commander Zelthar, a Klaxi military officer, whose cybernetic enhancements made him look more machine than insect. Your training file indicates experience in defensive tactics. We hope humans can keep up with our elite units. Changmin smiled politely. We'll do our best to learn from your expertise, Commander. The first session was labeled Survival Training. The mixed species squads were dropped into a hostile environment simulation, a jungle world with 1.8 standard gravity, toxic atmosphere, and predators designed to challenge the most capable soldiers. Subin helped set up the exercise, her movements efficient and precise. The humans will use standard survival gear, she announced to the alien instructors. Nothing special, just what any human soldier would carry. The gear looked laughably basic, simple breathing masks instead of full environmental suits. Light, fabric clothing instead of armor. Basic tools that seemed designed for camping rather than military operations. Are you certain this equipment is adequate? asked Veltana, a Vithani Special Forces officer whose crystalline body was encased in advanced protective armor. The environment contains Class 3 toxins and aggressive predators. It should be fine, Subin replied. If there are any problems, we'll adapt. The exercise began at dawn. 12 mixed teams were dropped into different areas of the simulation, each containing 1 human and 3 aliens. The objective was simple: survive for 48 hours while reaching an extraction point. Team 7 included Kyung-ho, listed as a human medic. His teammates were a Morphid scout, a Klaxi warrior, and a Vithani technician. Within the first hour, disaster struck. The Klaxi warrior, despite his armor and enhancements, stepped on a camouflaged plant that released spores containing enough neurotoxin to kill a dozen normal beings. He collapsed immediately, his systems shutting down one by one. We need immediate extraction. The Morphid scout gasped, his gaseous form turning a panicked red. Klextar is dying. Kyung-ho knelt beside the fallen warrior and opened his basic medical kit. Let me take a look, he said calmly. You don't understand. The Vithani technician's voice resonated with crystal panic. Those spores contain concentrated deathbloom toxin. There is no treatment. We need to get him to a hospital immediately. Kyung-ho examined the warrior's symptoms while pulling small vials from his kit. Deathbloom. Nasty stuff. Good thing I brought antitoxin. He began injecting the Klaxi with compounds that made his alien teammates step back in alarm. Those chemicals are more poisonous than the original toxin, the Morphid whispered. To most species, yes, Kyung-ho agreed, continuing his work. But they neutralize deathbloom in Klaxi biology. It's all about understanding the biochemical pathways. Within 20 minutes, the warrior was conscious and mobile. The alien team members stared at their human medic in stunned silence. Kyung-ho had just treated what they considered an absolutely fatal poisoning, using materials from a basic field kit. How did you know how to do that? The Vithani asked. Standard training, Kyung-ho replied, packing his kit. Human medics learn to treat all common alien toxins. You never know what you might encounter. Similar scenes played out across the exercise. Humans casually dealt with environmental hazards that had the alien elite forces struggling despite their advanced equipment. They moved through the toxic atmosphere like it was mildly unpleasant air. They handled the increased gravity like a minor inconvenience. Most disturbing was how they dealt with the predators. Jae-sung was part of Team 3 when they encountered a pack of razor wolves, synthetic creatures designed to test even elite soldiers. The creatures were fast, intelligent, and equipped with claws that could cut through most armor. The alien team members immediately went into combat formation, weapons ready. Jae-sung, who carried only training weapons that fired harmless energy, pulses stepped forward. I'll handle this, he said quietly. You can't be serious, hissed Sakara, a Klaxi Special Forces soldier. Those are military-grade combat synthetics. Your training weapons can't even hurt them. That's the point, Jae-sung replied. We're supposed to use defensive tactics only. What happened next was recorded by multiple sensors and would be analyzed by military strategists for years. Jae-sung moved into the pack of razor wolves with fluid grace, his training weapon painting harmless light patterns across their synthetic hides. But somehow every creature he shot collapsed immediately. How? Sakara demanded as the last synthetic predator shut down. Those weapons have no power. Jae-sung examined his training weapon thoughtfully. They have enough power. You just have to know where to aim. Every system has weak points, even synthetic ones. Hit the right spots with the right timing, and you can shut down anything without causing permanent damage. By the end of the 48-hour exercise, every human participant had achieved their objectives while helping their alien teammates survive, challenges that should have been impossible. More importantly, they had done it all while using only defensive tactics and basic equipment. The alien instructors gathered for debriefing in a secured conference room. Commander Zelthar's cybernetic components were sparking from stress. The humans, he began, his voice filled with something approaching awe. They were holding back. Holding back? Veltana's crystalline form dimmed with confusion. Everything we saw, their casual dismissal of lethal environments, their ability to treat injuries we consider fatal, their success against combat synthetics using training weapons. They were being gentle. Morphid General Puffix shifted to worried yellow. Explain. Watch the recordings again, Zeltar commanded. Look at their body language. Look at how carefully they move. These aren't soldiers pushing their limits. These are soldiers deliberately restraining themselves. The recordings were damning. In every situation, the humans moved with precision that suggested vast reserves of untapped capability. They solved problems with solutions that seemed almost trivial to them. When Kyung-ho treated fatal poisoning, his hands were steady, his voice calm, like someone dealing with a minor scrape. When Jae-sung disabled military-grade synthetics, he barely seemed to be paying attention. There's more. Subin had submitted her report on the exercise. She had noted 17 ways the simulation could be improved, including suggestions for more challenging environmental hazards and more realistic predator behavior. More challenging. The simulation that had pushed alien elite forces to their breaking point was, to humans, insufficiently difficult. They apologized, Veltana said suddenly, her voice barely audible. After the exercise, every human apologized to their teammates for being too aggressive during the defensive scenarios. The room fell silent. Too aggressive. While using only defensive tactics and training weapons, the humans had apologized for being too aggressive. Commander Zeltar made a decision that would change galactic military doctrine forever. He opened a direct channel to the Galactic Council. Counselors, he transmitted, we need to discuss the human military classification. They are not a developing species requiring protection. They are something else entirely. Explain, came the reply from Counselor Vethara. They've been holding back. Everything we've seen, their strength, their durability, their casual dismissal of lethal threats. It's them being careful not to hurt us. The transmission pause lasted several minutes. When Vethara responded, her usually musical voice was strained. Are you saying the humans have been pretending to be weaker than they are? No, Zeltar replied, reviewing the exercise data one more time. I'm saying they've been trying very hard not to show us how much stronger they actually are. Across the galaxy, similar reports began flooding into the Galactic Council. Military observers who had watched human students casually outperform alien elite units. Doctors who had seen human medics treat conditions that should have been beyond any field medicine. Engineers who had watched humans solve problems that required teams of specialists, all with the same consistent pattern. Humans acting like their superhuman capabilities were perfectly normal, while constantly apologizing for not doing better. The Galaxy was beginning to understand that they had not invited peaceful newcomers into their community. They had unknowingly welcomed apex predators who were trying very hard to be good neighbors. The question now was, what happened when those apex predators decided that being good neighbors was no longer sufficient? The attack came without warning. Young-Soo was examining soil samples in the agricultural dome of New Harmony Colony when the first explosions shook the ground. Through the transparent walls, he could see ships descending from the sky, sleek, predatory vessels that he didn't recognize. Yunji, get to the emergency shelter, he called to the botanist working near the hydroponic gardens. She was studying crop adaptations for low-gravity environments, her notes scattered across a workbench that now trembled with each distant blast. What about the research data? Yunji asked, her hands moving to protect months of work. Leave it, said Sungmin, the colony's geologist, as he burst through the dome entrance. His face was grim. Those are Sectar ships. We need to move now. The hegemony of Sectar had been watching galactic politics with growing anger. They had refused to join the Galactic Council years ago, preferring conquest to cooperation. Now, they saw the humans as an opportunity, weak Deathworlders who could be easily crushed, proving to the galaxy that the Council's peaceful cooperation was worthless. Young-Soo had read about the Sectar in his orientation materials. They were a warrior species, enhanced with combat implants and armed with weapons designed for domination. Their military doctrine was simple: hit hard, hit fast, and show no mercy. The colonists didn't make it to the shelters. Sectar warriors poured through the dome's emergency hatches like a flood of metal and malice. Their leader, War Commander Thexvar, stood nearly 3 meters tall. Cybernetic implants covered half his skull, and his forearms ended in claws that could tear through. Most armor? Humans, Thexvar's voice boomed through his suit's speakers. You will come with us. Your weakness will serve as an example to the galaxy. Young-Su stepped protectively in front of Yunji and Sung-Min. His hands were raised in a peaceful gesture, but his eyes were calculating distances and exits. There's no need for violence. We're researchers, not soldiers. What do you want? We want the galaxy to see what happens to Deathworlders who think they can play with civilized species, Thexvar replied. You will be our demonstration. The capture was swift and efficient. The Sectar had come prepared for human trickery. They used weapons that fired neural disruptors, keeping their prisoners conscious but unable to resist. Within an hour, Young-Su, Yunji, Sung-Min, and 17 other human colonists were aboard a Sectar warship, heading for unknown space. They weren't alone. The cargo hold contained prisoners from 6 other species: Vethani diplomats, Morphid, traders, and Klaxi civilians who had been captured in other raids. All were being held as examples of the Council's inability to protect its members. The torture began on the second day. Thexvar started with the non-humans, using methods designed to extract information and break spirits. The alien prisoners screamed, begged, and eventually broke under techniques that would have killed most beings in minutes. Then they brought Young-Su to the interrogation chamber. You will tell us about human military capabilities, Thexvar demanded, his cybernetic implants glowing red in the dim light. We know your species hides its true nature. Reveal your secrets, and your death will be quick. Young-Su looked around the chamber with professional interest. The walls were lined with instruments that radiated various forms of harmful energy. The air itself was poisoned with chemicals designed to cause pain and disorientation. The gravity was set to crushing levels that should have left him unable to stand. I'm just a farmer, Young-Su said calmly. I study soil and plant growth. I don't know anything about military secrets. The first session lasted 6 hours. The watching alien prisoners expected to see Young-Su emerge broken, like the others. Instead, he walked out under his own power, his breathing steady, his mind clearly intact. Impossible, whispered Velthara, a captured Vethani diplomat. Her crystalline form was cracked from her own interrogation. No organic being can survive that level of neural torture. Yunji, working quietly in the prison area, had been gathering materials. The Sectar had not bothered to clean their cargo. Hold thoroughly. There were traces of organic matter from dozens of worlds stuck in the corners and cracks. To most beings, it was just dirt and debris. To a botanist, it was a pharmacy. Sung-Min, she whispered to the geologist. Can you tell me about the mineral composition of this ship's hull?
Standard duralloy composite, he replied, recognizing what she was planning. But Yunji, even if you can synthesize something to help with pain, they'll notice if Young-Su suddenly shows no effects. I'm not making painkillers, Yunji said,
her hands working with plant matter that would have been toxic to every other species in the hold. I'm making medicine for everyone else. She was right. Within days, the alien prisoners were recovering from injuries that should have been permanent. Burns healed, broken crystals regrew, and minds damaged by neural torture began to function clearly again. How? Asked Morphdana, a Morphid trader whose gaseous form had been partially dissolved by acid treatments. Plants are amazing, Yunji said simply. Every world has something that can heal if you know how to prepare it. These scraps contain compounds from dozens of species' homeworlds. I just had to figure out which ones would help each of you. Meanwhile, Young-Su endured. Interrogation after interrogation. The Sectar tried everything: neural disruptors, chemical torture, radiation poisoning, pressure chambers designed to crush bones. Each session was broadcast to the galaxy as proof of human weakness. But something was wrong with their broadcasts. Young-Su never broke. He answered questions calmly, protected his fellow prisoners, and somehow maintained not just his sanity but his health under torture that should have killed him dozens of times over. Increase the intensity, HFY ordered, after the 10th failed session. No human can be this resistant. Commander, one of his subordinates replied nervously, we're already using lethal levels. Any higher, and the equipment will overload. Then use different methods. Break him. But they couldn't. Young Su endured acid baths that dissolved metal. He survived radiation levels that would have sterilized planets. When they tried to crush him in gravity chambers, he moved slowly but steadily, like someone walking through deep water rather than fighting forces that should have liquefied his bones. The alien prisoners watched in growing amazement as their human protector somehow shrugged off torture that exceeded the design limits of the sector equipment. What are you? Velthara asked him after another impossible session. Young Su looked at his hands, which showed no sign of the chemical burns he'd received hours before. I'm a farmer, he said quietly. I grow things in hostile soil under difficult conditions. You learn to be tough when your job is making life grow where it shouldn't be able to survive. But his calm demeanor hid growing anger. Each day he watched the alien prisoners suffer under treatments that were merely uncomfortable for him, but agonizing for them. Each night he listened to them try not to cry from pain that his own biology barely registered. The sector were hurting, innocent people to try to break him. And it was working. Not in the way they intended, but in a way that would have terrified them if they had understood what they were seeing. Young Su was getting angry. Back on Earth, news of the kidnapping reached the highest levels of government within hours. Inho, the military commander who had been quietly observing galactic politics from the shadows, received authorization for a rescue mission. What are our parameters? Asked Mi Young, his strategic coordinator. Retrieve our people, Inho replied, his voice carrying an edge that his staff had never heard before. Use appropriate measures. Beomsiok, the intelligence officer, pulled up tactical assessments of sector military capabilities. Ships that could level cities. Weapons that could crack planets. Defensive systems that had never been successfully breached. Time frame? He asked. Now, Inho said simply. Across the galaxy, the Galactic Council watched the sector broadcasts with growing horror. They had tried diplomatic intervention, but the hegemony ignored all communication attempts. They had threatened sanctions, but the sector laughed at economic pressure. They were running out of options when their sensors detected something impossible. A human fleet had appeared at the edge of sector space. Not the slow, clumsy ships they had seen before, but vessels that moved with predatory grace and devastating purpose. How did they get there so fast? Counselor Velthara demanded. Our fastest ships would take weeks to reach that distance. The answer came as the human fleet began moving toward the sector homeworld. These weren't the same ships that had taken months to travel between systems. These vessels covered the distance in hours, moving at speeds that defied everything the Asar galaxy thought it knew about human technology. Aboard the sector prison ship, Young Su felt the subtle vibrations that meant rescue was coming. His smile, when it came, was not the gentle expression the aliens had grown used to. It was the smile of an apex predator who had finally been given a reason to stop pretending to be prey. The first sign that something had changed was the silence. Across sector space, military communications went dead one by one. Not jammed, simply gone, as if the transmitters had never existed. War Commander HFY stood in his flagship's command center, watching his tactical displays flicker and die with growing unease. Report, he growled at his communications officer. Unknown, Commander. All long-range arrays are missing. Missing? The equipment is physically gone, sir. Sensors show empty space where our relay stations used to be. Before HFY could respond, proximity alarms began screaming throughout the ship. On the main display, shapes materialized from empty space. Human vessels that had somehow appeared without triggering any detection systems. But these weren't the crude, slow ships the sector intelligence had catalogued. These vessels moved like living things, their hulls gleaming with materials that seemed to bend light around them. They were smaller than sector warships, but radiated a sense of barely contained lethality. that made experienced warriors step back from their displays. Commander Inho stood on the bridge of the lead human vessel, watching the Sectar fleet with the calm attention of a professional evaluating targets. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency, their movements precise and economical. "Scan results?" he asked. Mi Young, his coordinator, gestured to a holographic display that showed the entire Sectar military formation, 47 combat vessels, 12 support ships, 3 orbital defense platforms. They're moving to intercept. "Resistance assessment?" "Minimal," replied Baom Seok from the intelligence station. "Their weapons are designed for planetary bombardment, not ship-to-ship combat with agile opponents. Their armor is heavy but inflexible. Their tactics are straightforward." Inho nodded. The Sectar had built their military around overwhelming firepower and intimidation. They had never faced opponents who treated their devastating weapons as minor obstacles. "Begin rescue operations," he ordered. What happened next redefined Galactic understanding of warfare. The human ships moved through the Sectar formation like predators through a herd. Weapons that could vaporize asteroids struck human hulls and simply stopped. Energy beams that could crack planets were absorbed, redirected, or ignored entirely. In return, the human vessels struck with surgical precision. Sectar ships found their weapon systems disabled, their engines shut down, their life support failing. But their hulls remained intact. The humans weren't trying to destroy their enemies. They were systematically rendering them helpless. Aboard the prison ship, the alien captives felt the subtle changes in artificial gravity and air circulation that meant the vessel's systems were being taken over from the outside. "How?" whispered Velthara, her crystalline form trembling with shock. Through the small viewport, she could see human soldiers approaching in what looked like simple spacesuits, but they moved through hard vacuum without apparent life support, manipulated materials that should have been impossible to handle without heavy equipment, and cut through hull armor using tools that seemed designed for delicate work rather than combat. Yejin was first through the breach, her movements fluid despite the fact that she was operating in an environment that should have been instantly lethal. Behind her came Junho, carrying what appeared to be a standard rescue kit but somehow managing equipment that typically required entire engineering teams. "Everyone stay calm," Yejin announced as she entered the prison hold. Her voice was perfectly steady, as if boarding an enemy warship under fire was routine procedure. "We're here to take you home." The rescued Vithani diplomat stared as Yejin tore through restraints designed to hold enhanced Klaxi warriors. The metal parted like paper in her hands, and she worked with the casual efficiency of someone performing a simple maintenance task. "The Sectar guards," Velthara managed to ask. "What happened to them?" "Sleeping," Junho replied, checking. "The alien prisoners for injuries. We prefer not to cause permanent harm when it's not necessary." Sleeping. 30 heavily armed Sectar warriors, each enhanced with combat implants and armed with weapons that could level buildings, had been put to sleep by 2 humans who treated the operation like a routine rescue drill. Meanwhile, Young-Soo was being extracted from the interrogation chamber by Hyunwoo, a human operative whose file listed him simply as Special Recovery Specialist. The chamber itself was a monument to sophisticated torture, devices that could cause pain beyond most species' ability to survive, operated by experts who had perfected their techniques over centuries. "Are you injured?" Hyunwoo asked, his hands moving over Young-Soo with medical precision. "Nothing serious," Young-Soo replied, though the alien prisoners could see evidence of torture that should have killed him several times over. They were very thorough, but not very effective. Hyunwoo nodded and made notes on a device that seemed far more advanced than anything the Sectar possessed. "We'll have full medical teams standing by, but your readings look normal." Normal. After days of torture that had exceeded the design limits of Sectar equipment, the human farmer's vital signs were normal. The extraction itself took less than an hour. Human teams moved through the Sectar prison ship like they owned it, disabling security systems that had never been breached, neutralizing guards who had never been defeated, and rescuing prisoners from a facility that was supposedly escape-proof. But the real shock came when the freed prisoners were brought aboard the human rescue ship. The vessel's interior was impossibly spacious, filled with technology that seemed decades ahead of anything in known space. Medical bays that could treat injuries from dozens of different species. Life support systems that maintained perfect environmental conditions for every rescued alien simultaneously. Gravity fields that could be adjusted individually for each passenger's comfort. "How long have you had ships like this?" asked Morphdana, the Morphid trader whose gaseous form was finally stable after days of torture. "A while," Mi-Young replied absently, focused on coordinating the broader rescue operation. "These are just our standard rescue vessels." Standard. Ships that moved faster than anything in known space, carried technology that seemed like magic, and operated with casual efficiency in situations that would challenge entire fleets. This was standard human equipment. The battle, if it could be called that, lasted 6 hours. By the end, the entire sector military formation had been neutralized without a single enemy ship being destroyed. Weapons were disabled, crews were sedated, and command systems were taken over by human operators who treated sector technology like simple puzzles to solve. War Commander Thexvar found himself confined to his own ship's medical bay, conscious but completely unable to move. Around him, his officers were in similar states, aware, alert, but helpless. "What did you do to us?" he demanded of the human medical officer attending them. Sung Min, the rescued geologist, had volunteered to help with prisoner care. He looked up from his work with alien medical equipment that he was apparently learning to operate in real time. "Pressure point manipulation," he said conversationally. "Your species has some interesting nerve clusters that respond well to precise application of force. Don't worry. The effects are temporary. You'll be fine in a few days." "You're a geologist," Thexvar protested. "How do you know sector anatomy?" "I study how things are put together," Sung Min replied with a shrug. "Planets, people, the principles are similar. Everything has structural weak points if you know where to look." The final phase of the operation involved the sector homeworld itself. The planet's orbital defenses had been designed to stop invasion fleets, with weapons powerful enough to destroy continents and shields that could withstand sustained bombardment from entire armadas. Byung-seok approached the problem with the methodical patience of someone solving an engineering challenge. His analysis identified critical points in the planet's defensive grid, places where precise applications of force could trigger cascading failures without causing massive destruction. "Target the primary tectonic stress points," he instructed the weapons teams. "Small yield, maximum precision. We want controlled seismic events, not planetary destruction." The strikes were invisible from space, tiny energy pulses that touched specific points on the planet's surface with surgical accuracy, but the effects were immediate and devastating. Across the sector homeworld, carefully calculated earthquakes disabled military installations, disrupted communication networks, and triggered landslides that blocked major transportation routes. Within hours, the most powerful military force outside the Galactic Council had been rendered completely helpless. Their weapons were silent, their ships were captured, and their homeworld was isolated, all without a single civilian casualty or permanent installation destroyed. The sector surrender came 72 hours after the first human ship had been detected in their space. Across the galaxy, military analysts struggled to understand what they had witnessed. The humans had moved faster than physics should allow, struck with precision that exceeded the known limits of targeting systems, and coordinated operations across multiple star systems with split-second timing. But most disturbing was the casualness of it all. Human operators treated the dismantling of the most feared military force in the galaxy like routine maintenance work.